friends, Miss Micallef here. It is Good Friday today. It's a very special day. It's the day that we believe that Jesus was crucified on the cross. He died on the cross because he loved us and he wanted to save us and open the doors of heaven for us. This story is called Love One Another, the Last Days of Jesus, and is retold by Thompson and illustrated by Elizabeth Uehara. This shows Jesus, that he's teaching the people. Once there lived a man named Jesus. Jesus was a teacher. He was wise and good, kind to the poor, the sick, and to everybody. He traveled and spoke to all about God's love and forgiveness. And he asked people to love one another and be kind to one another. Many who gathered to listen to Jesus were filled with hope and comfort. Jesus taught us that God is always near. Heaven is all around us, even now. We only have to look for it. Some people were not too happy with Jesus. They did not like what he said. And so we're going to find out what happens next. This is a picture of Jesus coming into the great city of Jerusalem with his disciples, his friends and followers. And this is where his enemies are going to capture Jesus. So we're going to find out about that. Jesus went to his temple and began to teach. And again, he spoke about love. A man asked, "Which of all teachings is the greatest?" And Jesus answered, "Love God and love one another. These teachings together are the greatest." Well, as I told you, not everybody was a follower of Jesus. The temple priests grew angry with Jesus, and they were envious and jealous. "Do you think he is wiser than we are?" they grumbled to one another. "Does he think he is a new king?" All week as Jesus taught in the temple, the priests plotted on how to arrest him. They came up with a plan on how to arrest him. One evening, Jesus gathered his disciples, his followers, for a meal away from the crowds. "I have wanted to be with you one last time," said Jesus, "for soon I will be no longer here." Jesus knew that he was going to die, so he wanted to have a special meal with his disciples, his followers. Later, Jesus and his disciples went together into a garden. Jesus was deeply grieved and troubled. He knew that something terrible would soon happen. He asked his disciples to keep watch while he prayed. The disciples wanted to do as Jesus asked, but they were weary and could not stay awake. Full of sorrow, Jesus prayed alone. "Whatever will come, let God's will be done," said Jesus. Jesus woke the disciples where they lay. "Could you not keep watch for even 1 hour?" he asked sadly. Well, the soldiers came and took hold of Jesus. And And they all decided that Jesus should die, even though he was a very good man. They just didn't like him. They were jealous. They didn't want Jesus to be king. They didn't want the people to be listening to Jesus. The soldiers brought Jesus to a hill outside the city, and they put him on the cross. Jesus uttered his final prayer, his last prayer. And then he died. And then he died. A man who loved Jesus took his body and carefully put it in a tomb. He rolled a large stone in front of the opening. Then he left to mourn the death of Jesus. He was very sad. He was a follower of Jesus. But not for long, my friends, because 2 days later, another friend of Jesus, a woman named Mary, came to the tomb. The large stone had been rolled away. Mary looked inside the dark opening, and the tomb was empty. Mary began to cry. She was afraid that someone had taken Jesus' body. Then she saw a man close by. She heard him ask, "Why are you crying?" And she answered, "Someone has taken our dear teacher away. Can you tell me where?" Then she heard the man call her by name, "Mary." Suddenly she knew him. It was Jesus she saw before her. She heard him say, "Go tell the others what you have seen." Jesus was no longer dead. He was alive. He rose up from the dead just like as he had promised. That brought a lot of joy to Mary. Mary found the disciples, the followers of Jesus, where they had gathered in hiding. "Jesus lives! He's alive!" she exclaimed. But the disciples did not believe her. They were deep in mourning, weeping with grief and remorse, for they knew they had deserted Jesus, and then he had died. They have to cheer up. Jesus did rise from the dead. And here we go. Suddenly, they saw Jesus amongst them. The disciples were startled and afraid. "Don't be troubled," they heard Jesus say. "Be at peace and know that I am with you always." Then the disciples rejoiced. Their grief was ended, for Jesus had died and yet he lived. "Go now," they heard Jesus say. "Teach others as I have taught you. Forgive and love. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." The disciples were filled with happiness and great peace, for now they understood in their hearts what Jesus had taught them. They knew their wrongs were forgiven and that love was greater than hate, greater even than death. In his love, Jesus lived on. Joyously, the disciples set out to bring Jesus' teachings to everyone and to tell the wondrous story of this day, Easter Day, to all of the world. And that's the end of our story, my friends.